Take a deep breath, and let's hear a story about Nico, the brave little squirrel who crossed a city to find his human friend. In the heart of Oakwood City, where skyscrapers stretched toward the clouds and cars hummed along busy streets, there existed a pocket of tranquility, a sprawling park filled with ancient trees and flowering shrubs. Morning sunlight filtered through the emerald canopy, casting dappled shadows that danced across the dewy grass like nature's own light show. The gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of wildflowers and fresh earth, a natural perfume that seemed to whisper secrets from distant meadows and forests long forgotten. Here, among the tallest oak trees' branches, lived a small russet-colored squirrel named Nico, whose bright, inquisitive eyes sparkled with unusual intelligence and curiosity about the world beyond his leafy home. Unlike his family and friends who scurried about collecting acorns and building nests, Nico spent hours perched on his favorite branch, watching the human visitors with fascination rather than the fear that guided his fellow squirrels. His tiny heart would beat with excitement as he observed their colorful clothes, heard their melodious laughter, and tried to understand their strange behaviors and rituals in this shared sanctuary. The soft padding of his paws against rough bark created a soothing rhythm as he moved from branch to branch, always careful to stay hidden, yet close enough to observe. Sometimes, when the park grew quiet in the golden hour before sunset, Nico would allow himself to descend lower, feeling the rough texture of the trunk against his sensitive paws, each groove and ridge telling stories of seasons past. Among all the humans Nico observed, there was one who captured his attention more than any other, a girl named Bonnie, who visited every afternoon wearing a yellow raincoat regardless of weather. Her hair, the color of autumn leaves, would catch the sunlight as she settled on the same wooden bench beneath Nico's tree, the familiar creak of the weathered wood announcing her arrival. Bonnie always carried 3 things: a worn blue backpack decorated with hand-drawn stars, a different storybook each day with pages that rustled invitingly in the breeze, and pockets full of cookie crumbs that she would scatter across the ground with gentle fingers. The sweet, buttery scent of those crumbs would rise up to Nico's branch, a delicious invitation that made his whiskers twitch with anticipation and his stomach rumble softly. Day after day, Nico watched as Bonnie lost herself in her books, her expression changing from wonder to worry to joy as her fingers carefully turned each page. He noticed how she would sometimes read aloud in a soft, melodious voice that blended harmoniously with the chirping birds and rustling leaves, creating a symphony that made Nico's eyelids grow heavy with contentment. Though dozens of feet separated them, Nico felt strangely connected to this quiet human girl who seemed to love the park as much as he did. The warmth of afternoon sun on his fur combined with Bonnie's gentle presence created a cocoon of comfort that made Nico's tiny body relax completely, his bushy tail curling around him like a soft, familiar blanket. Other squirrels would chatter and chase through the branches, pausing only to give Nico curious glances before returning to their busy lives of gathering and storing. But Nico remained still, watching Bonnie with patient fascination as she flipped through colorful pages or sometimes closed her eyes to listen to the park's natural music. When she left each evening, the bench seemed empty in a way that went beyond the mere absence of a person, as if some essential energy had departed with her. Those were the moments when Nico would finally descend to gather the remaining crumbs, savoring each sweet morsel, while the lingering warmth of the wood where Bonnie had sat seemed to transfer through his paws and into his small body. As seasons changed, painting the park in different hues and scents, Bonnie remained constant, and Nico grew bolder in his observations. The crunching sound of fallen leaves beneath his paws became familiar as autumn transformed their world into a canvas of reds and golds, creating a magical pathway between his tree and her bench. Sometimes he ventured closer than ever before, hidden beneath a nearby bush where he could detect the faint scent of the lavender soap Bonnie used, mixed with the earthy aroma of her well-loved books. Each day strengthened their unspoken routine, Bonnie reading peacefully while occasionally glancing up as if sensing Nico's presence, and Nico watching her, learning the unique rhythm of her breathing and the subtle changes in her expressions. Winter arrived with its silver blanket of snow that muffled the usual park sounds and transformed their shared space into a hushed wonderland of white. Bonnie now wrapped herself in a thick woolen scarf the color of blueberries, its soft fibers catching snowflakes that sparkled like tiny stars before melting away. Even in the coldest days, when most of the park stood empty, Bonnie would appear, her breath forming small clouds that disappeared into the crisp air as she settled on their bench, now dusted with snow. Nico, his fur grown thicker for the season, would watch from a snow-covered branch, his small body warmed by both his winter coat and the joy of seeing his human friend maintain their silent connection despite the chill. The cookies Bonnie brought during winter contained chunks of dark chocolate and nuts, their rich aroma rising through the cold air that tempt Nico's sensitive nose from impressive distances. On particularly cold days, she would leave extra crumbs, arranging them in small piles along the back of the bench, where they would be protected from the worst of the weather. Each thoughtful pile seemed like a deliberate invitation, making Nico wonder if perhaps Bonnie was as aware of him as he was of her. The idea filled his tiny chest with a glowing warmth that rivaled the coziest nest on the coldest night, a feeling of connection that transcended their different worlds. Spring returned with its symphony of new life-tender green shoots pushing through soil, birdsong filling the morning air, and flower buds unfurling in slow, graceful movements that revealed vibrant colors hidden through winter. Bonnie shed her heavy winter clothes for lighter fabrics that rippled in the strengthening breeze like butterfly wings, their pastel colors harmonizing with the blooming flowers surrounding their special spot. The bench, warmed once again by strengthening sunlight, became a perfect place for Bonnie to spend longer hours reading, sometimes until the sky blushed pink with sunset and the first stars appeared like shy silver pinpricks in the darkening blue. Days flowed into weeks, weeks into months, creating a tapestry of shared moments between the small squirrel and the quiet girl, neither fully aware of how much they had become part of each other's daily rhythms. The sound of Bonnie's footsteps on the gravel path would make Nico's ears perk up with recognition, while the occasional rustle of leaves above would cause Bonnie to glance upward with a small, knowing smile. When spring raindrops fell, creating a gentle percussion on leaves and benches alike, Bonnie would shelter under her yellow raincoat, its bright color standing out against the misty gray like a beacon, while Nico watched from the protective hollow of his tree, lulled by the rhythmic pattering that transformed the park into a different kind of sanctuary. Nico learned to recognize the different books. Bonnie brought some thick, with small print that made her brow furrow in concentration, others filled with colorful images that made her smile softly as her fingers traced the pictures. Occasionally, she would bring a special notebook with a cover that shimmered like the surface of the park's pond, and in this she would write with careful deliberation, sometimes pausing to look up at the trees where Nico hid, as if seeking inspiration from the very branches that held her unseen admirer. During these writing sessions, her face would take on a dreamy quality. Her breathing would slow, and a peaceful contentment would radiate from her like the warmth of afternoon sunlight, creating an atmosphere so tranquil that nearby birds would continue their songs without interruption. As summer approached with its longer days and shorter shadows, Bonnie began spending more time in the park, sometimes arriving early enough to watch morning dew evaporate in delicate wisps from grass blades and flowers. The gentle sound of her humming would float upward to where Nico perched, creating a soothing melody that harmonized with the buzzing bees and rustling leaves. These mornings had a special quality. The air felt fresher, the colors more vibrant, and time itself seemed to slow down, allowing both girl and squirrel to savor the peaceful moments before the park filled with other visitors. Nico found himself looking forward to these early hours when the world felt like it belonged just to them, a shared secret wrapped in morning mist and possibility. One unusually warm Tuesday in late spring, something changed in their comfortable routine. Bonnie didn't come to the park. Nico waited patiently on his branch, whiskers twitching with anticipation as the sun climbed higher in the cloudless sky, warming his russet fur and the empty bench below. The familiar creaking of wood under Bonnie's weight never came, nor did the rustling of pages or the enticing scent of cookie crumbs. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the grass like stretching cats, Nico felt a strange emptiness inside his tiny chest, a feeling he had never experienced before. The park seemed unnaturally quiet, without the soft sounds of Bonnie's breathing and the occasional murmur as she read particularly beautiful passages aloud to herself and the listening trees. A second day passed without Bonnie, then a third, each absence like a missing note in a familiar melody, throwing the entire song into discord. Nico found himself unable to focus on gathering food or strengthening his nest, his thoughts constantly returning to the empty bench and its missing occupant. The world seemed less vibrant, somehow colors dulled, sounds muffled, even his favorite sunflower seeds tasting bland against his tongue. At night, instead of curling into restful sleep among the soft moss and twigs of his nest, Nico would gaze through gaps in the leaves toward the city beyond the park, wondering where Bonnie might be in that vast jungle of concrete and glass, and if she was missing their silent companionship as much as he was. On the morning of the fourth day, something stirred within Nico, a feeling both frightening and exhilarating that made his heart race faster than when hawks circled overhead. Perhaps it was a particularly golden quality of the morning light streaming through the canopy, or the encouraging whisper of leaves in the gentle breeze, but Nico suddenly knew what he needed to do. The thought of venturing beyond the safety of the park would have terrified him just days ago, but now it filled him with determined purpose rather than fear. With one last look at the empty bench that had been the center of their shared world, Nico descended from his tree and took his first tentative steps toward the park gate, each soft pad of his paws against the earth marking the beginning of an unexpected journey. The transition from park to city was abrupt and overwhelming, the gentle rustle of leaves replaced by the harsh rumble of vehicles, the sweet scent of flowers overtaken by strange mechanical odors that made Nico's sensitive nose twitch in protest. Concrete felt alien beneath his paws, hard and unyielding compared to the soft earth and grass he knew, its rough texture scraping uncomfortably against his sensitive pads. Towering buildings blocked much of the sky, creating strange shadows and wind tunnels that made navigating even more challenging for a small creature used to moving through branches and undergrowth. Yet despite the intimidating surroundings, Nico pressed forward, driven by an instinct as powerful as the one that guided his kind to store food for winter, the need to find Bonnie and ensure she was safe. Humans moved through the city streets in hurried streams, their footsteps creating vibrations that Nico could feel through the pavement as he darted between momentary shelters of trash cans and newspaper stands. Few noticed the small squirrel making his way carefully along walls and through narrow alleys, though occasionally a child would point with delight or a dog would strain against its leash, sensing Nico's presence with a sharp bark that sent him scurrying for cover. Each new block brought new challenges. Crossing streets required timing and courage. Finding safe paths demanded creativity, and the constant noise made it difficult to hear approaching dangers. Still, Nico continued, guided by fragmented memories of which direction Bonnie usually came from and left toward, his tiny heart fueled by determination stronger than his growing fatigue. By midday, hunger and thirst began to slow Nico's progress, his small body not accustomed to such extended exertion without nourishment. Fortune smiled upon him when he discovered a small neighborhood park where kind-faced elderly people scattered breadcrumbs for pigeons, some of which Nico managed to claim for himself while staying safely hidden beneath a bench. The water from a small decorative fountain, though tasting strange compared to the park's stream, refreshed his parched throat and renewed his energy. As he groomed his fur back into order, Nico noticed something that made his heart leap: a yellow raincoat passing by the park's entrance, its color matching Bonnie's favorite garment exactly. Without hesitation, he abandoned his temporary rest spot and raced after this potential clue, weaving through startled pedestrians and narrowly avoiding being stepped on in his single-minded pursuit. The yellow raincoat led him through increasingly residential streets, where houses replaced apartment buildings and trees appeared more frequently along sidewalks, their presence like old friends offering encouragement. The pace was almost too quick for Nico's small legs, but whenever he felt he might lose sight of his guide, a fortunate pause at a crosswalk or brief conversation with a neighbor allowed him to catch up, his lungs burning with effort but his spirit soaring with hope. The sounds of the busy downtown faded behind them, replaced by the gentler symphony of wind chimes, distant lawnmowers, and children playing in fenced yards, a welcome change that allowed Nico's sensitive ears a moment of relief from the city's constant clamor. Finally, the yellow raincoat turned up a short walkway toward a small blue house with white shutters and flower boxes bursting with colorful blooms whose sweet fragrance reminded Nico of the park. Summoning his remaining energy, he scampered up a nearby maple tree, its familiar bark a welcome comfort after the foreign textures of the city. From this vantage point, he watched as the raincoat was hung on a hook beside the door before its wearer entered the house. Not Bonnie, as he had hoped, but an older woman with silver-streaked hair who shared Bonnie's gentle movements and the same autumn leaf color in what remained of her darker strands. The connection was unmistakable, and Nico's instincts told him he had found the right place, though not yet the person he sought. As twilight softened the edges of the world and turned the sky to watercolor shades of pink and purple, Nico explored the yard surrounding the blue house, discovering a garden filled with herbs whose aromatic leaves released calming scents when brushed against. Wind chimes hung from the porch emitted gentle, melodious tones that reminded him of Bonnie's humming, while a bird bath attracted colorful visitors who regarded the newcomer squirrel with curious but unthreatening interest. The peaceful atmosphere of this place felt like an extension of Bonnie herself, confirming Nico's belief that he had found her home. Settling himself on a branch with a clear view of both the front and back of the house, he prepared for a patient vigil, his tiny body exhausted but his spirit rejuvenated by the sense that his journey was nearing its conclusion. Night descended with its blanket of stars and mysterious sounds that would normally send Nico seeking the security of his nest. Yet here he remained vigilant, watching warm light glowing from windows that offered glimpses into an unfamiliar human world. Through one window, he could see the silver-haired woman moving about a kitchen, preparing something that produced delicious aromas wafting even to Nico's outdoor perch. Another window revealed a cozy living room with shelves of books reminiscent of those Bonnie brought to the park, their spines creating a colorful mosaic against the wall. The homey scenes stirred a strange longing in Nico's small chest, not just for Bonnie's return to the park, but for a deeper connection to this world that had always existed parallel to his own. Dawn arrived with gentle fingers of light caressing Nico awake from his uneasy slumber among unfamiliar branches, the dew-kissed leaves surrounding him sparkling like miniature stars, catching the first rays of morning sun. His fur was damp, and his small body chilled from sleeping outdoors without the protection of his carefully constructed nest. Yet the discomfort faded quickly as movement at the house's front door caught his attention. The silver-haired woman emerged, carrying a small watering can that she used to tend to the flowering plants with careful, loving movements that spoke of daily devotion. The gentle patter of water droplets falling on leaves created a soothing morning melody, accompanied by early bird song and the distant chiming of neighborhood clocks welcoming the new day. Just as Nico was considering how to safely investigate closer to the house, his heart nearly stopped as the door opened again, and there was Bonnie, wrapped in what appeared to be a soft blanket, her familiar form unmistakable despite looking somehow smaller and more fragile than he remembered. Her autumn-colored hair hung limply around a face paler than usual, her movements slow and careful as she settled into a cushioned chair on the porch, while the silver-haired woman clearly her grandmother brought out a steaming mug that released tendrils of aromatic vapor into the cool morning air. The scent of honey and lemon reached Nico's sensitive nose, along with something medicinal that suggested the reason for Bonnie's absence from their park bench. She had been unwell, perhaps too weak to make her daily journey to their special place. Relief flooded through Nico's tiny body, relaxing muscles tense from worry and exhaustion, while his mind processed this new understanding of Bonnie's disappearance. He watched as she sipped slowly from her mug, her gaze drifting across the garden with the dreamy quality he recognized from her writing sessions in the park. When her grandmother returned indoors, Bonnie reached into the pocket of her robe, and in a gesture that made Nico's whiskers quiver with emotion, pulled out a few cookie crumbs that she carefully arranged on the porch railing. Whether this was habit or hope, the familiar action created an invisible thread connecting this moment to their countless shared afternoons. Bridging the distance between the park bench and this new location was silent understanding. The morning progressed with Bonnie remaining on the porch, sometimes reading from a book her grandmother brought out, other times simply sitting with closed eyes as she enjoyed the gentle sunshine on her face. Nico observed with patient attention, noting how she occasionally glanced toward the trees as if missing her usual leafy companions, her fingers absently tracing patterns on the book's cover in the same way they would on the park bench. When a particularly bold robin landed on the porch railing to investigate the cookie crumbs, Bonnie smiled the first real smile Nico had seen since arriving, and the sight of it sent a wave of warmth through his small body, more comforting than the strongest sunbeam. In that moment of shared delight across species, Nico knew with certainty that the connection between them transcended their park routine, existing in something deeper than daily habit or convenient proximity. As morning transitioned to afternoon, Nico gathered his courage and made a decision that would forever alter the silent relationship he and Bonnie had shared. With careful, deliberate movements that betrayed none of his inner nervousness, he descended from his tree and approached the porch, each step bringing him closer to the human girl than he had ever been before. The wooden steps creaked softly beneath his negligible weight, the sound barely audible, yet somehow capturing Bonnie's attention, drawing her gaze downward to where Nico paused, his bushy tail twitching with anticipation and uncertainty. For a breathless moment, they simply regarded each other's small squirrel and human girl, without the usual distance of park bench and tree branch between them, seeing each other truly for perhaps the first time. Recognition dawned in Bonnie's eyes, widening them with wonder as she whispered something too soft for even Nico's sensitive ears to catch, her hand instinctively moving toward her pocket where cookie crumbs waited. With movements deliberately slow and gentle, she scattered a few on the porch floor near her feet, then retreated back into her chair, offering space and choice to her unexpected visitor. The familiar sweet scent rose invitingly, but it was the warmth in Bonnie's eyes rather than the treat itself that gave Nico the final courage to advance closer, his tiny heart racing with each step that brought him into this new territory of trust. The wood of the porch felt different beneath his paws than the park bench smoother, warmed by direct sunlight rather than filtered rays, yet somehow equally welcoming. Bonnie remained perfectly still as Nico cautiously collected the offered crumbs, her breathing soft and controlled in a way that spoke of practiced patience and profound understanding. When he had finished eating, Nico did something unprecedented. Instead of retreating to safety, he remained beside Bonnie's chair, his small body aware of yet unafraid of their proximity. The sounds of the neighborhood continued around them, distant lawn mowers, children's laughter, the occasional passing car, but on the porch, time seemed suspended in a bubble of mutual recognition that required no words or explanations. The gentle rhythm of Bonnie's breathing synchronized with the rise and fall of Nico's tiny chest, creating a shared meditation that deepened their silent connection beyond what either could have imagined during their park days. From the doorway, Bonnie's grandmother watched with quiet amazement, her experienced eyes recognizing the rarity of the moment unfolding on her porch. The afternoon light created a golden glow around girl and squirrel, highlighting the extraordinary nature of their communion, while birdsong provided a perfect soundtrack to this unprecedented meeting. When she eventually stepped forward to join them, her movements were as careful and respectful as her granddaughter's, honoring the delicate trust being woven between species with every passing minute. The subtle fragrance of lavender from her gardening hands mingled with the cookie scent still lingering in the air, creating an aromatic memory that would forever mark this day in Nico's mind as one of transformation and possibility. That evening, when Bonnie's strength allowed for a short walk in the front garden, Nico followed at a respectful distance, no longer hidden but openly accompanying her as she slowly circled the flower beds. The setting sun painted everything in warm amber hues that softened edges and created long, gentle shadows stretching across the grass like reaching fingers. Fireflies began to emerge as dusk deepened, their bioluminescent bodies creating moving constellations among the garden plants. Nature's own fairy lights welcoming the unusual friendship blooming in their midst. The cool evening air carried the sweet scent of night-blooming jasmine, its delicate fragrance seeming to enhance the magical quality of these precious moments, shared between a convalescing girl and a squirrel far from his familiar home. In the days that followed, Nico divided his time between the Blue House and journeys back to the park, gradually creating a new routine that encompassed both worlds. He discovered a hollow in the maple tree overlooking Bonnie's house that made a perfect temporary home, lining it with soft materials gathered from both locations to create a nest that bridged his past and present circumstances. The trips between locations became easier with familiarity, his small body growing stronger with each journey, while his confidence navigating the human world increased steadily. Each return to his original territory allowed him to gather special treasures, unique seed pods, particularly soft tufts of dandelion fluff, interestingly shaped twigs which he would bring back to leave on Bonnie's porch railing, small offerings that she received with gentle delight and careful placement on her windowsill collection. Bonnie's strength returned gradually, color returning to her cheeks and energy to her movements as spring deepened toward summer. Her grandmother's nurturing care combined with fresh air and peaceful hours spent reading on the porch, now often with Nico nearby, seemed to speed her recovery in ways that surprised even her doctor, who remarked on the healing power of joy during his final house visit. As Bonnie grew stronger, her laughter returned, a melodious sound that made Nico's whiskers twitch with happiness whenever he heard it rippling through open windows or across the garden. There was something profoundly satisfying about witnessing her transformation from pale fragility back to vibrant health, as if his brave journey had somehow contributed to her recovery in ways neither human nor Squirrel could fully articulate, but both somehow understood. On a particularly beautiful morning, when dew diamonds still adorned every blade of grass and leaf edge, Bonnie emerged from the house dressed in outdoor clothes for the first time since Nico's arrival. Her yellow raincoat draped over one arm, despite the cloudless sky promising fair weather. Her grandmother handed her a familiar blue backpack and something wrapped in paper that Nico immediately recognized by scent as cookies, freshly baked and still warm from the oven. With growing excitement, he watched as Bonnie shouldered her pack and turned toward the gate, her steps purposeful, though still careful, heading in the direction that would eventually lead back to their park. Without hesitation, Nico scampered down from his maple tree perch and followed, his heart light with the knowledge that their special routine was about to resume, albeit transformed by their new understanding of each other. The walk to the park took longer than usual, as Bonnie needed occasional rests, but Nico remained patiently by her side during each pause, sometimes racing ahead to scout the path before returning to confirm all was well. Other pedestrians smiled at the unusual sight of a girl seemingly being escorted by a devoted squirrel, some commenting on the remarkableness of wild creatures showing such trust in humans. Bonnie accepted these observations with quiet smiles, never attempting to explain the depth of connection that had formed between herself and her small companion. Some things, after all, existed beyond the realm of easy explanation, belonging instead to the world of heart knowledge and silent understanding that needed no validation from outside observers to be profoundly real and meaningful. When they finally reached the park gates, the familiar scents and sounds washed over them, both like a welcoming embrace: freshly mown grass, blooming flowers, the distant laughter of children playing, and the soothing rustle of countless leaves responding to the gentle breeze. Nico felt a surge of joy at returning to his first home with Bonnie beside him, two worlds merging in perfect harmony as they made their way along familiar paths toward their special bench. The dappled sunlight through the canopy created shifting patterns on the ground before them, nature's own celebratory confetti marking their triumphant return to where their story had begun. Birds sang welcome from surrounding branches while butterflies danced around blooming bushes, the entire park seeming to participate in marking this significant moment in the ongoing tale of girl and squirrel. The bench waited just as they had left it, weathered wood warmed by morning sunshine and partially shaded by overhanging branches that swayed gently in the breeze. Bonnie settled onto it with a contented sigh, her fingers running appreciatively over the familiar surface before she opened her backpack to retrieve a book, new one with a cover showing a squirrel sitting beside a human child beneath a magnificent tree. The sight made Nico's whiskers twitch with curiosity as he settled beside her on the bench rather than in his usual tree branch above, the new arrangement feeling perfectly natural despite its departure from their previous pattern. As Bonnie began to unwrap her cookies, breaking one into small pieces that she arranged in a neat line between them, the simple act carried the weight of ceremony, acknowledging how far they had come and the extraordinary journey that had transformed their silent bond into something rare and precious. For the remainder of that perfect day, they stayed together on the bench, Bonnie reading aloud in soft tones meant just for Nico's ears, and Nico alternating between attentive listening and gentle exploration of their shared space. Other park visitors passed by, some noticing the unusual tableau of girl and squirrel sharing a bench in peaceful companionship. Others too absorbed in their own concerns to observe the small miracle unfolding in their midst. The hours flowed by, marked only by the gradual movement of sunlight across the grass and the occasional turning of pages, time seeming to expand and contract according to its own special rules in this place, where two different worlds had found harmonious intersection. As afternoon began its gentle transition toward evening, the air taking on the golden quality that photographers call magic hour, both girl and squirrel basked in the simple perfection of being exactly where they belonged, together. When it came time to leave, Bonnie gathered her things with unhurried movements, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow would bring another opportunity to return to their special place. She left a few extra cookie crumbs on the bench, as she always had, a gesture now transformed from anonymous offering to acknowledged sharing between friends. The walk home unfolded at a leisurely pace, with Nico sometimes running ahead to investigate interesting scents or sounds, but always returning to Bonnie's side, their journey now a shared adventure rather than parallel solitary paths. The setting sun painted the western sky in breathtaking watercolors of pink, orange, and lavender, nature's own artistic celebration of connections that transcend differences and the courage required to bridge separate worlds. Upon reaching the blue house with white shutters, they were welcomed by the delicious aroma of dinner cooking and Bonnie's grandmother, waiting with a smile that grew even wider at the sight of her granddaughter returning with her unusual companion, still faithfully by her side. Inside, a surprise awaited while they were gone. She had constructed a small platform outside Bonnie's bedroom window, complete with a tiny weatherproof shelter filled with soft materials perfect for a squirrel's comfort. The thoughtful creation acknowledged what they all now understood, that Nico had become part of their family in his own unique way, his presence enriching their lives just as they enriched his. As twilight deepened into night and stars appeared like distant benedictions in the velvet sky, Bonnie fell asleep with renewed health and contentment while Nico settled into his new shelter, each dreaming of tomorrow's adventures, yet fully present in the perfect satisfaction of the moment, grateful hearts beating in peaceful rhythm, separated by species and circumstance, yet connected by something more powerful than any difference.